And this is the kind of what I wanted to touch on to start the show. That this week, Cat Williams did a podcast interview with Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp, of course, the football player for the Broncos from 1980s and 1990s, won a Super Bowl with John, two Super Bowls with John Elway, one with the Ravens as a tight end on that team with Ray Lewis in the early 2000s. Then Cat Williams, who was a major comedian in the 90s and the early 2000s, the voice of a pimp named Slickback. He was Bunny Mike in the Friday movie, etc. And they had a sit down talk. And during this nearly 3 hour interview, Cat Williams started going after all the other comedians of his generation that he feels have wronged him. Your retribution. So he talks about Cedric the Entertainer stealing jokes. And then people went online and found all kinds of jokes that Cedric the Entertainer was stealing jokes from designing women, stealing jokes from Cat Williams, stealing jokes from other comedians. They found clips of Bernie Mac talking about people like Steve Harvey and Monique, etc., stealing his jokes and using it in their acts, and him not having anything to even talk about because everybody else stole his material. The Cat Williams talked about Steve Harvey wearing a hairpiece and being bald, and the reason he had to switch over to television was because after Cat Williams roasted him at the World Championship of Stand-Up Comedy, he couldn't do stand-up anymore. He talked about these people's wives, saying that when you get into Hollywood, they give you a funny looking, or he said, weird faced, light skinned wife. And then people pulled up collages of all the major comedians, and all of them have a light skinned wife with an angular face. That's something that was said during the interview. But what took me aback was that in the week since this interview, or less than a week, about 5 days since this interview has happened, it has had 25 million views on YouTube alone. Not to mention, that's a 3 hour long interview that got 25 million views. Not to mention the clips of it. If you look on Shannon Sharp's YouTube page, each clip has about a million views also. And then each comedian that he talked about did their own response to it, either on Twitter or on social media or somewhere else, and those have millions of views also. And then people who weren't even involved made responses giving their take on it, and those views have hundreds of thousands to millions of views. I saw Gary Owens, the white comedian, he did a response to it, and that had 500,000 views, and he wasn't even involved in it. And my point is, this week, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, went missing for 4 or 5 days. And if you think I'm joking, he went missing. Apparently, he had a procedure, a medical procedure at Walter Reed. They said it was not a life-threatening procedure; it was an elective procedure, and things went poorly. And he ended up in the intensive care unit at Walter Reed for 4 days, and nobody told the White House. Nobody told the media. Nobody told the public. We effectively did not have a defense secretary this week while this whole Cat Williams situation was going on. At the same time, we had to authorize and launch airstrikes into Iraq to hit Iranian backed forces that were attacking U.S. troops in the region. We're still having the issue of Houthi rebels in the Black Sea. We're still having the issue with Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon. You're having other Republican Guard aligned troops in Iraq attacking American soldiers. And that got, I think of the video I was looking at about that had 1.7 thousand views. That's a 1,700 views because on a discussion about the Secretary of Defense disappearing for a week. But a old comedian talking to an old football player has social media in a buzz. And part of the reason that I believe black communities have a hard time advancing and catching up with other folks is we have this addiction to mess. We have this addiction to gossip. We have this addiction to foolishness, as opposed to looking at the fact that Congress returns in a week and we have to have a continuing resolution on the budget, or the government will shut down and folks are going to be out of a lot of money and jobs. No discussion on that. But we can talk about who stole a joke in 1997. We're going to talk more about this after the break. But I'll hear from you. What do we need to do to get black folks unaligned with kind of entertainment and foolishness and more aligned with the political, social, economic issues that are holding our communities back? Because for some reason, I've never seen a situation where Jerry Seinfeld was sitting down with John Elway talking about Jay Leno, and that became just the talk of the community anywhere else. It only seemed to be us that will take these messy situations and turn that into the casus belli that we have going forward. Meanwhile, leaving the actual political and economic issues we need to be concentrating on for other people to handle. And when other people are handling your affairs and your important issues, you're always going to be left behind. We'll be back after the break. News and Talk 1380 WA.